Welcome to the Navigator Podcast.
Welcome to the Navigator Podcast and some special bonus content for Navigate Academy Module 53, Coaching and Mentoring. And today I'm very happy to welcome special guest Jennifer Sierra to the podcast. Jennifer is the founder at Rise Up Coaching, where she specializes in leadership development and career transitions. She brings a background of nearly 20 years as a sales professional and people leader in the pharmaceutical industry. Jennifer holds a Master of Public Health from the University of South Florida and obtained her coaching certification from the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching, also known as IPEC. She resides in North Carolina and offers virtual coaching to anyone wanting to uncover their potential. Jennifer, welcome.
Thank you so much, Patrick.
So while I was preparing for our conversation today, one of the things I always do is as I go through and I look at people's websites, and I noticed on your website a statement that said coaching sessions often involve understanding self-imposed limitations. What do you mean by that, and how is it important in the business world?
Yeah, no, thank you, Patrick, and thank you for inviting me here. It's a pleasure to be here. That's a great question, and it's really and truly the premise for coaching, in that our limitations can often show up as stories. These can represent in ways like I might not be enough, or there's no way I could possibly go for that next role. What if I fail? This also kind of leads into some narratives of that imposter syndrome that we hear about. And one of the primary questions that I ask my clients is, what is the story you believe you're living in? And is that true? Right? We know Henry Ford has said, whether you think you can or can't, you're right. So these limitations hold a lot of power to where they may limit us or not limit us, depending on how we're scripting that narrative. And really the premise being behind how important our mindset is, really kind of quieting that gremlin voice, as we call it in the coaching world, of sort of that negative voice on our shoulder that's not helping us in a positive way. It can also show up in other people. I might think everything's just fine with me, but if only my boss did something different, I could be happier in my job. Or if only that coworker wasn't as complicated to collaborate with, my life would be easier. And these can kind of lead to feelings that we are out of control. And one of the principles that we really focus on in my coaching work is where we don't have any control on anyone outside of ourselves is true, but we do have control over ourselves. And we get to choose the power of our perspective and the power of our response. So that's, in short, what I mean by some of that limitation phrasing.
And if I could, I mean, we get to choose the power of our perspective. We get to control ourselves. In coaching, how do you, in a nutshell, kind of shape people's ability to control their perception of themselves?
Well, first, I think it's understanding ourselves. We can't really understand the world we're living in until we understand ourselves. And so coaching really allows that opportunity to hold the space, articulate what's going on in our head. What are our thoughts? How is that impacting us? Hold that mirror up and be able to give the client really the choice on, is this helping me or hurting me? Is this experience I'm having the experience I want? And if the answer is no, then it allows us to sort of acknowledge and shift to another narrative that might be more serving.
Excellent. All right. So during the webinar that we recently hosted, I mentioned that it's often beneficial for coaching to come from outside of an individual's company or their organization, even if the organization is financially sponsoring that coaching. How do you feel about that statement?
I think what you said, one of the important phrases there is that a company-sponsored program, we can probably everyone admit that brings some allure of the financial investment is no longer impacting, someone's wallet.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that there's a right or a wrong. I'd like to respond from a place of both perspectives, if I may, because I think they both bring some unique benefits. From a place of having internal coaching in your organization, second to the fact that it's company funded, it is signaling an investment of the company to the employee. And that is flattering and helps you, understand that you're being identified as top talent, someone that's worthy of that investment, if you will. There's always a confidentiality piece with coaching, so that should never be compromised, whether it's an internal coach or an external coach. There are certain parameters of how the employer will make agreements with the coach, but traditional coaching in the full integrity of the work should provide confidentiality to you as the employee for your private conversations with the coach. If that's not happening, that would definitely be a signal that maybe you would want to look outside into an external type coach. But I think there are some benefits to an internal coach. They may understand the company landscape. They may understand the company dynamics, the job descriptions and things like that, that, could help the conversation be better understood. But potentially, generally, it would tilt towards just that professional identity. Sure. Versus an external coach, where you may be obviously funding that on your own. I would submit that that brings a signal of ownership, for that person to have for their own personal development. And one of the phrases I say very frequently is, wherever you go, there you are. And so what I mean by that is we're not really different people at home than we are at work. There may be different dynamics at play, but the clients that I'm working with externally from their organization, it allows that line to be blurred a little bit easier from our personal life to our professional life. And I think that can bring some positive as well. Coaching is never to the people, it's to the situation. So whether that coach is internal or external, there really should be it doesn't really matter who did it. It's about the situation and what that person's trying to accomplish to create a different experience.
All right, thank you. That's very insightful. And I particularly like where your statement, and keep me accurate here. Wherever you go, that's who you are.
Wherever you go, there you are.
There
right.
You are.
So,
okay.
Some of my personality traits and just the way I respond to challenges is more or less very similar on the field versus off the field. Sure. We're not really two separate people.
And that story you tell yourself is the same whether you're home or at work.
It is, and it may show up in different ways, but it is extremely powerful and really shaping our overall identity and how we're seeing opportunities, and also how we're seeing challenges as well.
All right, excellent. So, one of the other points we made during our webinar was that coaching and mentoring are really two distinct tools, and that they each have scenarios in which they work best. What advice would you give to executives on how and when to use coaching for themselves or for their team? And what should they expect from it?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, my area of focus in coaching is, as you said, around leadership development, also around energy leadership. And so that really comes into play in everyday life. You don't have to necessarily wait for a situation. Specifically with energy leadership, it's all about how we show up and the energy that we create around a situation. It's palpable by other people in the room. And so that's one of the things that I do a lot of work in. Oftentimes clients might be seeking coaching because they're looking for an increase in that self-confidence. They're looking to expand in their communication skills and their self-awareness. Sometimes individuals might have received feedback at work by their leader, by their team. And so they're looking to act upon very specific feedback that they've received, or that maybe they've self-identified. It might be that they know the next role they're aspiring towards is going to require some of these skills. So this can be a signal of maybe I should invest in a coach to help me get from this point to the next point. As a thought partner, as a person that can really kind of hold that mirror up and allow the individual to see what they may be difficult for them to see on their own. But as I said, there is that confidentiality piece that's critical. A coach should be presenting themselves in a way that's professional, active listening. You'll when you experience coaching for the first time, you realize there's a lot of open-ended questions because it's geared towards in a different way from mentoring, where I might be sharing my experiences with you, and this is how I did it, and these were the results, and this is how you might be able to do it. Coaching is really different from that. Coaching is allowing the individual to come to their own conclusions for themselves, identifying their own limiting beliefs that might be holding them back from the goal they're trying to achieve. And so they're in the driver's seat in this. And the coach is holding that space, really being an active listener, potentially challenging and stretching the individual. It becomes one of those people that you have in your corner for the pep talks, but also for, the challengers.
Yeah.
My coach in particular, that I still work with, she's one of the first people that are in my inner circle that I'm going to share positive news with and different things along the way that I'm celebrating. So it really becomes, someone that's investing in us and only wants the best for us, for the goals that we're trying to obtain.
And so a couple of the words that stood out to me, and I want to put an analogy here. When you said mentors are about telling people how they did it, it's almost like, look at me. This is how I got here, where you use the word mirror a lot when you talked about coaching, is kind of looking in the mirror. So rather than look at me, this is how I did it. It's almost like look at yourself and set the path for how you're going to do it. Is that a fair statement?
It's completely accurate. And I feel like we also can call those blind spots.
Sure.
Oftentimes we have an intent, we're living through that intent, and yet how others are experiencing us can really change that I didn't realize you were experiencing me that way. And so the mirror can allow us to see ourselves, but also can allow us to see how others may see us. And really sort of expose some of those, as I said earlier, that gremlin voice that might be keeping us small, keeping us stuck, keeping us feeling like we don't have any control over our own selves and how we would respond to a situation. So empowering is an understatement on some of the benefits that the coaching work can provide, is definitely empowerment and transformational.
Thank you very much. So what advice would you give to someone who's considering coaching and is maybe just a little bit hesitant to start?
Sure. No, that's a great question. I think in the grand scheme of things, the industry of coaching is really relatively new from a concept. And, you see a lot of talk therapy, you see a lot of mentorship, you see a lot of networking, but coaching has really its own unique individual category. If I was to describe the impact of coaching in one word, because someone might be hesitant to reach out to a coach, I would say simply transformational. For myself and for the work that I see light up in my clients, it is such an investment of personal development. If that was the whole premise of how I created Rise Up Coaching, is it doesn't matter where you are and the title that you currently hold. If the experience you're currently having is not the experience you want, you can benefit from coaching. And so you don't have to reach that CEO status to feel like now you're, qualified to hire a coach. Coaching can meet you exactly where you are, and can really allow you to uncover things that truly just can't be done outside of the work of a coach.
Excellent. So, and I love that. That's really insightful about personal growth, which is something that I know you're passionate about and something that I'm passionate about. So thank you for sharing that perspective, because I don't think I could have said it any better at all. So thank you.
Yeah.
One of the things we ask our guests each month is, what business book are you currently reading, and how is it influencing you, particularly if it's related to it, particularly around coaching?
Yeah, well, interestingly enough, I am an avid reader. I do try to break away and read some novels here and there so I can escape and get into a story. But on the business front, I just recently finished a book called Leveling Up by Ryan Leake. And ironically, he is also a coach. He's an executive coach. And this book was just so rich in so many ways. Some of the areas that the book touches on is around self-awareness, humility, integrity, our identity, and the goals connected to us as people. And it's really a remarkable book. I highly recommend it. I'm biased because it was written by a coach as well. But I feel like if you're hesitant to work with a coach, this is actually a really good book to read because it's going to introduce you to all the principles that coaching addresses. Obviously, your work with a coach can really allow that to expand and understand what that means to you personally. But it's a fantastic book. And it's a new author that I was introduced to, and I'll be following his work. I know he has another book coming out next year that I'll be waiting for on working with complicated people. And so I feel like that provided just a nice, interesting perspective and really confirmed some of the principles that we study in coaching on how we can understand ourselves better and how we're interacting in particularly the business world.
Excellent. I just wrote that down. I just put that on my reading list. So thank you for sharing that, Jennifer. It has been a pleasure reconnecting and chatting with you today. Really appreciate you joining us as a guest. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Patrick. I appreciate the opportunity.